Greetings from the Long Island Sound podcast. Welcome to the show. Please rate, review, and comment on the show, and call our listener line and leave a message for our guests. Dial 631-800-3579. All right, enjoy the show.
Thanks for joining us for the Long Island Sound podcast. Each week we explore new music and dive deeper with the artists and their stories behind the music. Please subscribe and rate and review us wherever you stream this podcast. Here's your host, Steve Yusko.
In today's episode, you'll meet a veteran sage of the music industry. I sat down with David Noyes of Cadillac Moon and the Walkers, and we talk about music, the muse, struggles, and discovery. We dive into 3 of his songs, and now let's have a listen to Never Look Down.
I know you've got worries. I know you've got pain. I think I understand how you feel. You feel your life is ever shorter, always filled with clouds and rain. And your love and your dreams, they're not real. Let these things ride, they'll soon be over. Lullabies were made to ease your mind. Don't run, don't hide, just listen to me one time. Just once, hear your own lullaby. Just once, hear your own lullaby. Sing a song of sadness, sing a song of joy, and sing it loud so everyone can hear. Let it push against the madness of every grown-up girl and boy. Let it fly and defy every fear. Let these things ride, they'll soon be over. Lullabies were made to ease your mind. Don't run, don't hide, just listen to me one time. Just once, hear your own lullaby. Just once, hear your own lullaby. I know, I know, I know. Let these things ride, they'll soon be over. Lullabies were made to ease your mind. Don't run, don't hide, just listen to me one time. Just once, hear your own lullaby. Just once, hear your own lullaby.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Long Island Sound podcast. I'm Steve Yusko, your host. I'm really excited about this episode. I'm here with a mutual friend that I got introduced to by Mike Nugent. His name is David Noyes, and you'll know him from Cadillac Moon and most recently from the trio The Walkers. And I'm really happy that you're spending the time with me, Dave.
Happy to be here.
Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you.
So we heard one of your songs coming in to the podcast. We'll get to that later. Mm-hmm. But I'm really always interested in, how'd you pick up an instrument? What was your first exposure to how music found you, I guess?
Wow. I
distinctly remember, actually. I didn't see this one coming. My father had a 1907 Gibson parlor guitar in the closet of our apartment in New York City, and I was about 8 years old. It had one string left on it.
Okay.
It was all rusty. The bridge was peeling up. And I pulled it out of the closet and just was playing the one string. And there was a song on the radio called "The Roof's Got a Hole in It and I Might Drown."
All right.
By these swingle singers, or one of those big singing folk groups from the 50s and 60s. And I started following the melody on this string, finding the melody on the string.
How old were you at this point?
7 or 8. And I remember my mother just, oh, he's a genius. And and that was it for a while. And then I developed an interest in playing. I was loving Peter, Paul, and Mary. Of course, I'm aging myself. And I was loving Peter, Paul, and Mary, and the Kingston Trio, and the Brothers Four, and Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley. Yeah, I liked that music, and my dad got me a little nylon guitar, and I just started learning these simple folk songs.
Now, what's a parlor guitar?
Oh, a parlor. It's a smaller bodied guitar, meant to not be particularly loud, and it's just a smaller sized guitar. It's it's referred to as a parlor guitar.
All right, cool.
Bodies.
That's really neat. It's amazing. Now, did Dad play at all, or no? Like, how did that end up in the house?
My father loved music. He played violin, and it always sounded like cats having sex. But he loved it. And my mom was not particularly musically talented.
Yeah, that was the same. That was the same in my family. My father could play the radio, loved music, loved all types of music. By the way, Mom was tone deaf. I've been accused of being that, and it was a stretch sitting next to her in church. Having her sing in every key, which I've been accused of as well. But it's interesting that I took two things out of just that short story you told me about your mother's encouragement, and you may have joked about it, but I'm sure that really played a role in furthering you along in your music career.
No doubt. In fact, she never stopped encouraging me. She was always a fan. My younger brother and I wound up playing music together. He was also able. He had skills, those untapped skills as a little kid.
Right.
He wound up being a bass player, and he sang really nicely, and we sang together in groups growing up when we were teenagers, and Mom was always a fan. She just did whatever she could.
Oh, that's
she
really neat.
helped us buy instruments. She supported us all the way. Of course, she'd make us sing for her,
Of course.
Yeah, but that was a small price to pay for all the support we got from her, yeah.
I remember Billy Crystal, the comedian, tells a story about, what really kicked off his career was really performing for his family, doing impressions of different family members and that sort of thing. And there was somewhat of that in my family as well. And now, as I reminisce about it, you think about, hey, that kind of puts you out in front of people. And for good or for worse, better. You're out there and you're getting applause and encouragement, and it's furthering you along. I just want to make mention too for our audience, for people who are new to the podcast, anything that we mention, or most things that we mention, we're going to have in the chapter marks. So that song you spoke about that came up on the radio, I'm going to look that up. I'm going to put a little photo of that group and that song. So for those who are interested.
How comprehensive.
Yeah, well, that's in case if it gets really boring, David, then people can at least look at the chapter marks and kind of muddle through it, So you get the nylon guitar, okay. Did you take any formal music lessons, or where'd it go from there?
I learned on my own.
Really? Okay.
I learned on my own. I didn't learn a whole lot. I've had my whole life, I've had an interesting relationship with playing a musical instrument. Without going on too long about it, I know so many people who I hold in extremely high regard, who have that obsession, who have that kind of terrific focus.
Right.
On just staying with their instrument and working on it all the time. My relationship was a little different. I was a little bit ambivalent about it. I had other interests. There were things going on in my life which also pulled my attention away from the guitar. So up until I was in my late teens, early 20s, I had an on-again, off-again relationship with the guitar as a general thing.
Wow.
I really did. And that changed when I hit a certain age. And I suddenly was swimming in a need to express myself.
Okay.
And the guitar became a very concise tool to start writing tunes and to start expressing myself musically. But, and even in my adult life, there had been periods of time when my other interests pulled me away. It was always related to music, but I didn't necessarily play a lot.
Wow. You know what's interesting to me about that? And I've got a few dozen singer-songwriters and musicians that I've interviewed in the past 7 months. And many of them had a common denominator of an obsessive aspect to their instrument. I mean, literally, whether it hooked them when they were 7 or 8 years old, or even a gentleman I had a few weeks ago said, no, I didn't really kick in till junior year of high school. And then it became a thing that they really dove in with 2 feet. So I actually find it very encouraging to hear that you've had that on again, off again relationship, and yet I consider you very successful in what you've done, and we'll get into your career and music has been.
Thank you for that.
A constant in your life, so that ebb and flow. So for those singer-songwriters that are out there that may have had or have now the relationship that David had with his instrument, all is not lost.
I certainly hope not.
You know what? It's so funny because I have guitars behind me in my office. I've got maybe my obsession is this podcast. My wife will certainly tell you that that's been my obsession, where she says, kind of shut up about it. Can we talk about something else at the cocktail party? But and then I look at those guitars and I'm like, and then this sense of guilt of I got to break it down and start, as Mike Nugent would say, you got to start woodshedding it, brother. You got to put the time. You got to put the time in. And I'm 61 years old, so if I can put the time in and try to make myself a little better, maybe there is some hope.
You could make it.
Yeah, but I'll never play on the podcast because that would be the end of the podcast immediately. You would hear people unplugging all over the world in multiple countries. Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we just take a quick break? And when we get back, let's talk about what happened after the nylon string guitar. We'll be right back, everybody. Hang with us. At the Long Island Sound, we're much more than a podcast. We're building a community. Please go to gigdestiny.com, check out all our social media links, subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. Please comment, call the listener line, tell us what you think, what questions we should ask, who we should have on the show. And most of all, we thank you for your generous support. And remember, support the artists who are guests on the show. Now back to the podcast. Hey, everybody, we are back, and we are the beneficiaries of working in the Melts in Your Ears studio. And at the controls is actually Mike Nugent. So if there's any problems with the audio, we're going to blame Mike, okay? No, only kidding. Hey, I'm number one too. You're number one too, Mike. When we last spoke, Dave, we're with David Noyes, by the way. He's still here. He didn't leave. And you spoke about getting this, Dad got you this nylon guitar, and you started to progress with that. So kind of bridge me into where you moved from that learning that nylon guitar on your own to where you've played out publicly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a long process, but I can digest it a little bit, compress it a little bit. That went on for a while. There was a period when I wasn't playing that much. I got interested in model rockets and dreams of being a designer for NASA and all that, the stuff that 10, 11, 12-year-old boys think about. Family split up. I moved to East Hampton with my younger brother and my mom and her new husband, and the interest in music started coming back again. At that point, I didn't even own a guitar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in Manhattan, the family splits up, and now you're moved from Manhattan out to the east end of Long Island, which is a culture shock in and of itself, I would think, besides, family transition.
This is in 1967, so even East Hampton was certainly the country.
Sure.
It was, dead as a doornail in the winter. I I you have to go back a little bit. I did have a little Japanese electric guitar.
Okay.
That my father got me to. That was a period that I kind of accidentally left out. And I made friends with my friend Kirby Helmuth years and years ago. We were both about 12 years old, and we started playing together. And we started actually writing songs together.
Really, at 12?
Yeah,
wow.
And I don't have any recordings of them, but they were pretty silly. But it was that collaboration that increased my interest in doing this on a more serious level.
Right.
The absolute fun of playing with somebody else, and the hidden benefit of learning so much. He was a better guitar player than I was.
Yeah.
You know, he was one of these gunslingers for his age. Sure. And I just watched what he did. And whenever I got stuck, he would show me how to do it. And if I've ever had any training, it was from him. And then subsequently through my entire career, I watched better musicians
right.
and asked them how to do what they're doing, you know.
Well, I tell you, that's where the generosity, and I found this late in life. You know, I was I call myself a closeted player. You know, I learned on YouTube and didn't take lessons with Mike till much later. Mm-hmm. I wanted to learn the neck, you know, what the heck I was actually playing. And until I played in a church band, then it really kind of kicked for me, because then it was just, everybody else was always better than me in a good way. And we were very generous to help me along out of necessity to make things sound better. But it was great.
We get gifts along the way.
Yeah.
We often don't recognize till much later. The little things that are put in place in front of us that we just take for granted as kids.
Right.
And when we look back on it, we find, you know, those are all acts of grace by other people, moments of generosity, which made it possible for us as musicians to keep going forward and not get discouraged.
Let me ask you this. Yeah. Let me get in the mind of the 12-year-old David. No, seriously, playing with his buddy. What were your influences? You know, one, I think it's great, the fact that two 12-year-olds say, hey, let's write some music together. But what were your influences at 12 years old that inspired you?
Kirby's apartment. We were still in New York. I was still in New York at the time. Okay. This is before the move to the East End. Kirby's apartment was our music haven. He had a record player and a pair of nice speakers, and we would listen to albums all afternoon. And I remember one was Simon and Garfunkel.
Okay.
I can't remember which album it was, but it had Richard Cory on it, The Tale of Richard Cory. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they didn't make that many albums. So it was one of 3 or 4 albums.
Okay.
I don't remember which one.
And that's early in their career as well.
Very early in their career. Yeah, they might not even have been 20 yet, those guys.
Okay.
And, you know, albums like that, we didn't own a lot of records at the time, but the ones we had, we soaked them in.
Right.
And we were trying to learn the little riffs and, you know, what beginners do. They listen and they try to figure stuff out. That's where I developed an ear.
That was great about a phonograph, is that you could just lift the needle off the record at that point where you just heard that riff, move it a couple millimeters back and put it back down again and hear it again and hear it again.
I always thought that was such a humorous thing. I always tell the story that we'd run across the room, play a song, put the guitar on my lap, and then when we got past the part I was trying to learn, I would run back and, you know, move the needle, and it was so much work. I mean, things are so different now.
Right.
As we all know.
Yeah, but I you know, it's interesting to have that ear training, because you're training your ear as well. And the fact you picked it up at 7 to listen to the radio, you had early ear training, or you had a skill.
Yeah.
That you could build on.
Kind of innate skill.
So what was the first? So you're there with your buddy. When did you play in your first band? I assume it was a band.
I played with him. We played. We were so excited. We were 12 years old, and we often went to this kind of luncheonette place a few blocks away, like 86th Street, 85th Street, and Lexington Avenue, and we used to go there and have burgers and sodas and whatever it is that we were eating at the time. And once we brought our guitars there, we were kind of sitting in a corner,
right,
just playing and fooling around. He said, well, why don't you guys come and play for me? You know, come play as a performance. And we had no idea what that entailed. So we brought our amplifiers and our 2 little Japanese
guitars, yeah,
Zimgar guitars or whatever they were.
Uh-huh.
And, we played a couple songs, and then he kicked us out because we were too loud. And the same thing happened at a church. We played downstairs in a church social, and we played a few songs. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
We were just doing the best we can as a couple of 12-year-olds. 12-year-olds now are a different species than me and Kirby at 12.
Right.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Just a different skill set.
Oh, it's a phenomenal difference, a quantum leap difference.
Yeah.
And we were too loud, and so we were asked to stop. So shaky beginnings.
Key takeaway is they actually asked you to play.
Yes.
Which is I think that's great.
We thought we were on top of the world.
Wow. So bring me a few chapters forward. So when did you hit the big time, I guess?
I joined a band in high school. Now I'm out east. I joined a band as a sophomore in high school called The Zoo, which I'm sure is a very typical name over the years. Mm-hmm. And I had progressed a little bit as a guitar player. I could play a little lead. I could play rhythm. I could work songs out.
Okay.
I knew the basics. I could kind of get by playing simple rock songs, and we played a lot of Doors.
Yes.
We played, we played both what was popular at the time and stuff we were able to play. And the keyboard player's name was Phil Markowitz. He was a dentist's son in high school. He turned out to be quite a well-known concert jazz pianist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he played with Mel Lewis, Thad Jones. He went on to big and great things. And Tally Jackson was our drummer, local kid, a black kid, one of my best friends in high school. I played guitar at the time. Can't remember who else. And the three of us were the core of the band. We had no bass player because Phil, the keyboard player, played bass with his left hand at 15 years old.
Right, especially if you're playing the Doors. They didn't have a bass player.
Yeah.
They played bass on the keys, right?
That's exactly right.
I got to tell you a quick Doors story because when I used to work in a deli, it was Nicholson's in Levittown for those who might be from the area. And I had this guy, Richie, who would play the album The Soft Parade forever. And I hated the Doors just because he liked the Doors for no reason. But from the incessant playing of that album, it finally got through to me, and I appreciated it. And it was just from sheer hearing it over and over and over again that I really got to like the poetry of Jim Morrison and the eclectic approach.
I always just thought they sounded unique musically.
Yeah.
I always look for a band that has a sound that stands out. Right. And sometimes I don't even particularly like it, but I like the fact that they have a sound that's theirs.
Yeah.
That was the thing about the Doors. Plus, understand, we're 14, 15, 16 years old. We own, each of us owned maybe 5 records.
Right.
And we were not music hounds in the usual sense that you would think. So we were playing songs that we heard on the 5 records that we owned.
Okay.
And picked out ones that we could actually play. So it started small. It started in a very rudimentary way, which I'm sure is a universal story. You start simple and your musical tastes evolve and mature, and you start developing your own musical taste. At 15, I had no musical taste at all. I just liked music, and I wanted to play the guitar in a band. And I learned the songs that I was able to play, and I went out and I did it. There was very little conscious thought or planning to it.
Yeah, what I find interesting as well, and I can speak for myself as far as music discovery, is I grew up during pop music, which still exists today, the Z100s and, the AM radio that was prevalent before FM really kicked in and expanded our world. And then I found myself, in a way, reminiscing about music that I like, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Neil Young, and kind of getting in that hamster wheel of that genre, so to speak. And it was actually a radio station. It was WFUV radio, Fordham's radio station, that kind of broke it out for me. and introduced me to stuff. They had that Hamster Wheel, which I enjoyed, but they branched out to other music that I would not have been exposed to. And if it's one wish that I have for this podcast is to find an audience that, hey, I want to go on a music discovery because there's a lot more that I can go and enjoy. And a lot of it is really kind of pushing yourself out of your own wheelhouse.
Exactly.
So to speak, and getting, quite an experience. And I've been really fortunate in just some of the musicians I've met. And it's not music that I would have looked up to go out to, but I've been exposed to and go, hey, that's pretty cool. And I'll leave that mystery there for future episodes. But and that leads to, finding your voice. But before we get into that, we'll talk about how you found your voice and Cadillac Moon and the other things. Let's talk about the song that our audience got to hear before we began yapping away, and that was Never Look Down. So tell me a little bit about that song, how that came about, and it boils down to where does the song come from? Right.
And for me, and I can only speak for myself, it depends on the song.
Right.
It depends on, the songs come from different places, different emotions, but also, the mechanics of actually developing a song in your head can be very, very unique, depending upon what song you're talking about.
Absolutely.
This one was Never Look Down. Started out as a little story about talks that I had with my dad when he was very depressed, and he was trying, through his depression, he was trying to help me with mine.
Wow.
And after the family kind of exploded.
Yeah, sure.
Went through a fairly extended period of depression. And I remember just a lot of the things he said, and they were very simple things. Mm-hmm. And the song kind of came out of that. I have to remind myself that songs are sometimes the lies that tell the truth.
Okay.
There's not... You cannot take anyone's song and assume that every line there is purely autobiographical or actually happened.
Right.
So if you're trying to capture a moment in your life where you had a certain feeling, you had a certain aim in mind, and you want to express where you were at that moment. And so that song came from there. It was just advice to myself.
Interesting.
Basically, advice to myself.
It's funny. I use a tagline, and it sounds like a marketing tagline, but I say, let the music take you on a journey. And I'm conscious of the fact when I ask people about how a song came about, I generally don't ask, how'd you make that song? What's it all about? Explain the song to me.
Really hard.
That would be a huge disservice to people because it doesn't leave room for the imagination and for each of us in the audience to make it our own and let, I'm sure this has happened to you, hey, this song meant this to me.
Yeah.
It meant that to me. And you might say to yourself, wow, it's not something that I was thinking about, but that's kind of cool that meant this particular emotion or situation to me.
Any comment like that is the kind of validation which, God, I mean, it's wonderful.
Right.
Even a small, short comment that anyone would care enough or be interested enough to just acknowledge the fact that something you did moved them even a little bit.
Right.
How grateful I am for that, whenever that happens.
Yeah.
And I never expect it, but...
Right. And one of the things, and I'm in awe of if people haven't gotten that already from the different episodes, I'm really in awe of singer-songwriters or just songwriters in general that can say something in song that I feel and have meant to say, but can never put words or music together with that, And the other thing, which I think is a great art, and it's the way, I was listening to one of your songs, and it was going into like a sorrowful phrasing as far as the words, and you switched to a minor key.
Probably the third song.
Yeah, okay, so we'll leave that a little bit of a mystery, and we'll expand upon that. But I think that's an interesting way, and we'll talk about, when we get to that third song, we'll talk about how do you pick a key, when you write a song. So tell me about this. So now you're out in East Hampton, you're playing around. What was the next step?
My high school band kind of disbanded, and my mother took my brother and I out to the music store in Southampton, took a bank loan out, and let us buy our dream instruments. We were at that point probably 15 or 16. And my brother was just as interested in music as I had become. So I bought a Gibson Hummingbird acoustic guitar, and my brother bought a Gibson SG electric guitar, and an amplifier.
All right. The story behind this: how'd you coerce and guilt mom into doing this? Because I think that would be a great tip for people.
You know what? I don't recall. I don't recall it working out that way. I think I could honestly say that this was a moment in my mom's life when she really followed through her fandom, her appreciation for what we were doing. It was a very generous thing to do, and
sure,
the deal was we were supposed to pay her back,
right.
And to a certain extent, I suppose we did.
Right.
But you know how those things go when you're a kid.
Sure.
And I really think it was just a genuine effort to keep us happy enough that we would continue playing music, because there was something about us doing that which she found thrilling. She just found it wonderful to watch.
Right.
So this was her just, laying something in front of us that helped us move forward, like I mentioned before.
But also putting that obligation of you're paying me back is kind of shoring up, hey, we better, this ain't going to sit in the closet like the parlor guitar with the one string. This is going to get its use out of it. Yeah. And what I find interesting too is maybe I'm reading too much, but your mother's support in that aspect, it's not like, hey, yeah, that Japanese guitar is going to carry to you till you're 40, type of thing. It's good enough. No, she literally made the investment and took a loan out for the investment that you made in your craft.
For good instruments.
Oh, God bless Mom.
Not that she, it's not that she knew anything about instruments. She left it up to us to choose instruments that we thought were good and would do the job for us at the time.
Question out of left field: where are those instruments today?
That's a long, sad story. Oh, no. How many times have I talked with my musician friends about how I wish I'd kept my 1964 Telecaster, how I wish I'd kept my 1970 Gibson Black Custom, my Gibson Hummingbird, which my high school sweetheart wound up having, and then lost it. And, nobody knew at the time, this is on a different subject, of course, but no one knew at the time the value that these instruments would accrue over the years.
Sure.
To me, a Fender Telecaster would look like a part of a surfboard with a neck bolted on, and it was so simple and elegantly modern and simple, and it did the job. And little did I know that people would be selling them 35 years, 40 years later for, $30,000. Right. Had I only known, right?
Right. And, a lot of it's, what I find interesting, it's not the mechanics of it per se, but it's what famous musician actually picked it up and made it their own, that puts a value to a particular model.
Oh, sure.
That sort of thing. So it's kind of cool. Why don't we do this? Let's take another quick break.
Sure.
And when we come back, let's jump into the second song that we have and kind of explore that. So stick with us, everybody. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Steve.
Are you a singer-songwriter who wants to take your music to the next level, and you need some professional musicians and really that expertise to help you along? Well, check out Melts in Your Ears Studio. It's Mike Nugent's studio. If you like what you've heard here today, Mike's the guy who can make the connections, put the tracks together, and give you a quality product. Check it out. Hey everybody, we are back with David Noyes, and we're exploring and discovering new music and great stories. And to be honest with you, David, I find it very heartfelt because I find a glimmer of hope, even for myself, if I decided to take those 1,000 songs that I haven't written and put them together before I die, so I have some sort of legacy besides debt for my family. Let's talk about the second song you brought to the table, Rain, Rain, Rain. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll let everybody get a listen to it.
That song is also a good opportunity to go back and add to my comment about where songs come from.
Sure.
And each song has a different origin. Rain, 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 for instance, came from a bass line.
Okay.
And there was just something about it that was bouncy. It's not a unique bass line. It's a bass line you've heard a million times. Mm-hmm. But if you get three bass players to play the same line, they're going to sound three ways different. There's no doubt about that. Songs can come from simply coming up with a clever title, and you can build a song around a title. Sure. Which is what happened a lot in Cadillac Moon, the band I was in, where I really learned how to collaborate for the first time. Like seriously collaborate as a songwriter, keep the ego out of it, and just shoot for the best product, the best quality thing that you can come up with, allowing other people to inject their own point of view. And I also needed a lot of help with lyrics. I'm just not a great lyricist, Sometimes I nail it, and most of the time I can't quite do it. I need help. Right. So I learned how to collaborate with Cadillac Moon, both musically and as far as songwriting it goes. So we come to Rain, 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 which is a very recent song. I put that together last year.
Okay, great.
And the previous song I put together in 2002, but it refers to a discussion I had with my dad in like 1965.
Wow.
So
you got a great memory.
Well, it's about certain events in your life sticking with you.
Sure.
And informing your actions and informing the way you grow up and grow old. Rain, Rain, Rain it comes from a bass line and just feeling disgusted and angry at the world condition and the narcissism that's been on parade. Right. That seems, just from my point of view, just seems to be getting worse and worse. It just seems that the way people act and the way people behave is more and more on parade and more out in the open, almost as if they've been given permission to just act poorly.
Right.
And so the song turned out to be, it's a bookend song. The first verse and the last verse are comments about those people from my point of view.
That's great.
My discouragement and my disdain for those people. I'm using quote marks here, those people. And yes, it's admittedly a little judgy. The two middle verses are warnings to myself to behave in a certain way so I don't become those people.
Let's talk about narcissism, because I think you bring up a really good point. And that's that word, just even politically now, it's very obvious to me. But personally, I had a situation that I worked through where it was clinically, a clinical narcissistic person to the point of, and this happened to be in the church where I worked, and it blew my mind, and I saw in hindsight, which is my best educator, is a systematic approach to manipulation and the manipulation of people and the people that were collaborators in the narcissism, either deliberately or unsuspectingly. Mm-hmm. And now, you know what? This song is a good reminder for me too, because you do say we all have a bit of narcissism in ourselves, so it's something to be watchful for. But it's something that I can spot immediately, and it's also something that calls in my mind to why, and how does this happen? How do people support that? That aspect of a person's personality that kind of feeds in this cyclical style. A narcissist needs a
constant supply.
A constant supply of feeding, of feeding on that. So anyway, before I jump off my soapbox, let's jump into the song "Rain, Rain, Rain." But at least you have an idea of what you're talking about.
The first verse is a simple statement: "I don't care about your money. I don't care about your fame." And in fact, from my point of view, without those two things, you'd be nothing at all. You wouldn't be famous anyway.
Right.
That the way American and Western culture honors and becomes a big fan of kind of vacuous people that don't really have as much to offer as you might think. The last verse is just a comment on negative people who carry that dark cloud around.
Sure.
You know, you're like the rain that never stops, no matter where you go. You know, just pretty simple. But the middle verses are, as I said, my way of reminding myself that there are certain things that I can do under my own volition to be better, just to be better generally. Right. You know what? How do you feel? How do you feel when you're not coping? What do you do when no one's looking? They're all questions general questions about how do I behave? What do I think about when I'm under stress, when I'm under duress? What do I do? Do I act out or do I remind myself there's a way out of this? There's a way out of every situation and every bump in the road. I do not have to become a jerk.
Right.
You know, so it's not really meant to be a political statement at all. It's really just about keeping your shit together.
Yeah, you're just calling attention to the times, and
yeah,
and we all need that.
Well, the third song really does that. The second song is much more of a general statement about my anger and how do I control that anger and not let it help me behave badly.
Destroy you, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Plus, it's very catchy, and it's got a great guitar solo.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how catchy this song is. Hey, everybody, check it out. Rain, 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 and we'll be right back.
I don't care about your money. I don't care about your fame. Without those things, you wouldn't be famous anyway. How do you stand when trouble finds you? How do you cope when you've lost your way? What do you do when no one's looking at the end of the day? Rain, 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 go away. Don't come back some other day like the rain. You like the rain. How do you feel when you're tired of living? When you're someone you don't want to be? Do you offer something when it's time for giving graciously? There's a storm that surrounds you. Whatever you say, whatever you show, you're like the rain that just keeps on falling wherever you go. Rain, 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 go away. Don't come back some other day like the rain. You like the rain.
Hey everyone, we're back. Let me tell you, I really enjoyed Rain, 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 and it really does hit some heartstrings for me, and I'm sure it will with the audience as well. You bring a lot of great stuff out there. So where do you want to go next, David?
I wanted to make a general statement about songwriting in general.
Okay.
We talked during our break about, I brought up the whole term songwriter.
Right.
And it stings me a little bit because, and this, this is not about false humility. It's about the fact that I'm not a songwriter by trade. Mm-hmm. I'm a moderately skilled musician who happens to write songs once in a while. That's no reflection on the quality of the songs, mm-hmm. but it's not a commercial craft for me. I've always found it very difficult to write a song.
Sure.
And especially when I'm trying to write a song. And the songs that I've offered you here today, along with a few of the others, are songs that kind of came to me. And I'm sure you hear that all the time. They come to you because something's been building up. Some musical idea has been bouncing around in your head.
Right.
And some emotion or point of view has been simultaneously bouncing in your head, and they somehow, during that magical creative process that no one can really describe, they come together and a song kind of arrives. Sure. And all you really have to do is polish it up and, make sure it's as good as it can be. I just wanted to get that off my chest about being a songwriter. I do write songs. And but it's not my commercial craft.
Right.
So I'm a bass player and a guitar player.
So what's interesting, and I've reflected on this, is I can only speak from a male perspective, in that need to create and to get it out is something I thrive on. For me, it's not writing songs, but for me is when I'm this is the creative process. I really enjoy it. I'm in sales. Sometimes I never see the fruits of my efforts, and sometimes I have to come home on the weekend and, the dreaded or not so dreaded honey-do list is actually something I enjoy. Sometimes I need to physically see something that, hey, I did that. And I've been accused of, hey, honey, come look what I did. Yeah, okay, it's nice, but, you didn't square the corner type of thing. But there's still that need and that drive to get that out. You kind of mentioned it earlier on in the podcast as far as, when you started writing songs, you had that urge to produce.
Yeah, express myself.
Express yourself, And what's great about songwriting is it's out there and it's open to interpretation, which I think is a good thing and can mean so many things to so many people. Let me take something out of left field. I only know you as a bass player. Obviously, if you can play the bass, you can play the guitar. Is the bass...
Well, not so obvious. Not so obvious.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so where are you between the two instruments?
Interesting. In the very early 80s, I started playing the bass more and more often with, little trios and quartets, local bands, because there was a glut of guitar players, frankly.
Right,
right. And I had, I'd hit a certain level on the guitar. I could handle myself. I could learn some fairly complicated stuff, but I wasn't progressing as a guitar player the way I was watching other people progress around me. I was just surrounded by freaking geniuses,
Right.
So I became I picked up the bass only because it was so much more in demand.
Sure.
And I had played some bass in high school. Mm-hmm. The pit band and all the plays I played. Okay. That's where I kind of learned how to read music in a very rudimentary way, playing for the school plays in the pit band. We actually had a pit band, it was 3 years in a row. So I started just working a lot more as a bass player. I started being exposed to a lot more kinds of music as a bass player. And I was really able to branch out. And, the time came, of course, when I had to rethink how I was playing the instrument and reevaluate how I was doing it, because I started out, as many guitar players who switch to bass do, they start out by playing the bass like a guitar.
Right.
And there's no fault in that. It's just a natural thing that happens. And as I got better on all the instruments that I play, I realized I had to do some serious what Mike calls woodshedding, right?
Yeah, sure.
I call woodshedding. I had to reevaluate and learn better techniques, get a better sound. Mm-hmm. A lot of it's equipment too.
Well, let me. You bring up a good point about equipment, because I played a little bit of bass, very lousy, but I played it, and it was out of necessity as well. Maybe because I was a horrible guitar player in the church group, and they were like,
"Oh, come now,
take out 2 strings, and maybe you won't be as bad." But I did notice when I saw you play with the Walkers that you have an electric stand-up bass that you play. You play the traditional bass.
Yeah.
This may sound like a stupid question. Do you play an upright big bass as well?
I do. I actually have one in my house.
Okay.
The problem is that they're physically very hard to play.
Okay.
And I didn't come up that way. I did not come up in like high school orchestra playing the bass.
All right, right.
And I never developed the kind of hand strength and the arm strength. I may have had that 30 years ago.
Right.
But it's not something that I could sustain. I could not play a whole set of music on those things. I love the sound, but it's just the bass that I put together. That upright thing is really just it's an electric fretless bass.
Okay.
That is played in an upright position because it's so long.
Right.
It's a longer scale, so it's not really an upright bass in the classical sense.
Okay.
It doesn't have. You can't bow it.
Okay.
Put a bow on it because the strings are flat next to each other. They're not round.
Not like a cello would have.
Like a cello or a bass fiddle.
Okay.
But I love playing that, and that was just one of many alterations I made in what I was doing to change things up, to try something new. And I instinctively knew I would play differently on the thing because it's physically harder. Okay. And it's fretless. So there is, I play electric fretless bass, of course, so I know my positions and there's muscle memory involved. But this was a different scale.
Right, right.
The distances were longer, and I had to learn a whole new set of muscle memories. And I knew it would affect my playing in some way. I only hoped it would be positive, and it was. It simplified my playing and made me think more about saying more with less. Right, and it's a blast to play.
Let me ask you this. Taking from a novice player, my assumption would be with a fretless instrument, you can slide from note to note without hopping over a fret very simply. Is there something else that I'm missing of why somebody would choose a fretted bass as opposed to a fretless bass?
It's all about the genre you're playing. It's all about how you want to express yourself musically. The other thing about a fretless bass, or mostly fretless bass, is that you can also get a vibrato on your notes, like a violinist would.
Okay.
There's a vibrato. You can make a note waver, which is a very slight lowering and raising of the pitch.
Okay.
By wiggling your finger. On a fretted instrument, you can't do that. The fret is a hard key. It's a hard stop.
Where you got to be, yeah.
And the sliding also. It's very expressive to be able to slide into notes in a way that a fretless instrument can do it. There are things that you probably wouldn't want to play a fretless bass on. And if you're playing I Want to Be Sedated, you don't really, you're pretty much going to play a bass guitar.
Right.
And bang the crap out of it.
Sure. Hey, well, I learned something today, so that's kind of neat, how you approach that. So you have many years in the business as a musician. If I dragged the younger David into this room, the 15-year-old David, we're not going to go back to the 12-year-old David, what advice would you give that David or any new musician who is said, yeah, I can do this, I want to be a songwriter? What advice would you give?
What a great question. Didn't see that one coming, although I should have. What a great question. I would say first thing I'd say is, if you're a musician and you take what you're doing seriously, if you only can write one song every 5 years, you still wrote a song, and it has the same value as a song that was written by someone who can pump them out weekly.
Right.
So never undervalue the songs you write because you don't do it often, and because you don't do it as an everyday profession or an avocation. It's the first thing. Always try to be aware of where the song's coming from, what your motives are, what it is you want to say. If you want to write a song that says nothing important, fine. But it has to have some kind of quality. It has to have a quality all of its own.
Sure.
For instance, a song you can really dance to,
right,
scream and yell to. They all have their value.
Right.
That's not what I do, but it's what other people do. They all have their own value. I would also say, don't be so afraid don't worry so much about making money, which was a big thing with me. I just was always insecure about making a living.
Sure.
So I would always put music aside and leave it on the shoulder, on the margins, to continue feeling I was earning a living and feeling that I was being, a responsible human being.
Right.
And contributing to the family and to myself and to my wife. And, that it took a lot of valuable time away. And, what they say about worry, you spend all this time worrying about stuff that never happens. And then you look back and say, wow, what a waste.
Yeah. It's interesting. What came to my mind, and I've had many a conversation with musicians who talk about coming to that crossroads. I have a family. I've come to the crossroads where it was an either or decision for them.
Sure, yeah.
Do I take the musical highway, or do I do the responsible thing and put consistent food on the table, what have you, and that worry of money? But a term came to me, believe it or not, this came in my theological studies, if you can believe I actually studied theology, of both and, or parallel lines, meaning maybe I can do both. And a lot of it is circumstantial. Sometimes you're in survival mode and you've got to do what you got to do. Other times things come into our lives that allow us to really delve into the art aspect of it and survive at the same time. So it's interesting that it's not always a crossroads, but it can be a parallel.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was able to get that done as far as taking care of both of these paths and try to make them work together in some kind of way. And there are ups and downs.
Right, sure.
Sometimes you're really focused on the music to the exclusion of everything else, and sometimes, like I said, you have to put it on the margins. But up until now, many, many decades, I've managed to get something done.
Right.
In the field of music. I've managed to make a living teaching music, teaching, guitar lessons and doing gigs, and then doing the little side jobs that I've always had to do as a gig worker type of guy, painting houses and fixing things and being a handyman, all that kind of stuff. That all comes into play. But for some wonderful reason, I never quit that ambition to just stay in the game.
Right.
Enough to get something done, to write something that was nice, that was good.
Now, I got a parallel left field analogy for you on that. Now, as you've done this work, and you've done it for decades, okay, but you still go out and gig and enjoy your music and play with your friends and do all this. And I was just thinking, well, what else in this life is? It's kind of like golf, where the golfers and I'm not a golfer, I'm a horrible golfer, but you can golf into your 90s. That's where I see the parallel of something that you love doing, that you enjoy doing. And the other thing is, in golf, my assumption, and being a musician, you get away from, I'm not Tiger Woods. I'm not going to compare myself to Tiger Woods. I'm going to do a little bit better than I did before by picking up the skill or trying this or that. I would assume it's the same for a musician.
Absolutely, well. Especially as you grow and mature as a person. You're men of a certain age, right? Women of a certain age.
Right.
You start to give up that grip, that tight grip on all the things you're worried about. You start to loosen that grip, and it allows you to enjoy the moment that you're in a lot more a lot more. And it's the same with playing music. You know, the key word is my friends.
Right, right.
Key word. I get to play with my friends. I get to play with musicians that are better than me. I get to play with musicians that may not be better than me. But I get to play with all these people that are kind of after the same thing, that those moments when you're in the middle of something that's really good.
Right.
And, you know, how else do you get that? You can't buy that at the store.
Right, right. I'll give you guys played for us at Fred Shore's, and there was a piano player, I forgot the gentleman's
Mark.
Yeah. Mark, who's great. And it's something you see. I try to be very in tune to watching musicians and how they communicate back and forth to each other. But you could see those moments between you guys that are there that's saying, hey, this is a great place to be right now in what we're doing, you know. And you're not thinking about, because we're getting paid for this, you know, we're really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's often your last thought.
Which is great.
Yeah. But remember, a lot of that has to do with the men of a certain age.
Sure.
In my younger years, I was in a wedding band I've been in a wedding band for 21 years, and it hasn't been busy for quite some time.
Right.
It hasn't really been an aspect of my life. But the first 10 years of that band, I was like just being driven into the ground with work. It was exhausting, and it wasn't that enjoyable.
Right.
But that was an opportunity to actually make money playing music.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I was proud that I was able to pull that off, to do that for myself, to take that step and do something a little bit different, less creative. Mm-hmm. But I can't tell you how much I learned doing that. As a bass player especially, I learned so much. I was exposed to all the music I would never have voluntarily learned. You know, I had to learn this stuff.
Right.
And so much of it was so cool. It was such great stuff to learn.
And it also took you out of your wheelhouse.
Absolutely, yeah, which is what we talked about before.
Yeah.
Yeah, just musical discovery, right?
So that brings us to the title of the third song that you brought to the table, What Can I Do? Which kind of ties into the theme of what can I do as an older man, what can I do as a younger man, as a musician, what you had to do. Tell us a little bit about that song, and then we'll jump into it.
Yeah, that song, that was a song that came to me. 15 minutes.
Oh, son of a bitch. You guys always do this to me.
It rarely happens. I can worry a song for months before I get even the first line. Believe me.
Okay.
This song is I have to say it's a direct result of my frustration with the last 5.5 years.
Okay.
Of our country's condition. I'm not going to stand on a political soapbox here. All I'm going to say is that I was so disturbed by what I was watching in front of me, that this song just arrived. It's a depressing song. It's a sad song, but I think it captures that desolate feeling that sometimes we get. We don't know what the hell to do.
Right.
How could this be going on? You know, what the hell can I do here? And it's that powerlessness.
Yeah, that almost hopelessness of, I can't influence what's going on, right?
Yeah. You know, so, I mean, it's a bunch of alliterations. The sun comes up, we all wake up. But some people in this world have a horrible time ahead of them when the sun comes up.
Right.
You know, they're going to have either a horrible event happen in their lives, or they're going to wake up hopeless and powerless.
That reminds me, this is the song that when I was listening to it, and people will hear the lyric, I'm not going to say it, that it brings images into my mind. But I also noticed in putting together with the music itself, how you drop into a minor key or a minor phrasing. So this song comes to you. In this particular case, did the key for the song, did the lyrics come first, and then you decided to put in the key? How did that kind of happen?
Interesting. And like I've said several times, every song comes from the place that it comes from.
Right.
May be completely dissimilar to what another song came from. This song came, frankly, from an A minor chord in the first line.
Okay.
It just was there. The sun comes up, I forget my own lyrics, of course. I can't remember the first two lines. But those first two lines were there already, and the A minor chord was there already. Gave me the framework.
Okay.
And the chord changes are really simple. You know, I wanted to keep it really simple. I wanted the song to come across like something anybody could sing when they're feeling despair.
Wow.
Or imagine singing when they're feeling so powerless and lost by having anything in their hand to help the situation.
Well, you know, it's good for as a person in the audience or listening to this, in hearing these type of songs of lament. I'm not the only one thinking this. I'm not the only one feeling this, and there is a glimmer of hope that this is something that is being recognized. And through quarantine and everything else, where a lot of us have been isolated and hopeless, sometimes hearing the lament from somebody else can say, well, there is some solidarity there.
Yes.
And maybe you don't know what you can do, but maybe I know what I can do. And it could spur on inspiration as well.
Isn't that one of the major driving forces behind popular music generally, is the commonality of the message?
Right.
You know, why do 30,000 people come to a concert and they all hold up a match, you know?
Well, they used to. Now they hold up cell phones with their...
But, you know, that solidarity, like you said, that commonality, the shared humanity, that moment in your life when you know that everyone around you is thinking the same thing you are, and that you get a little power from that.
Right.
A little hopefulness.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
A little hope. And that song, it's trying to do that exact thing.
Great. All right. Why don't we do this? Let's take a listen to What Can I Do? And then we'll be right back.
Morning comes, the sun is up, the day begins for all. But what will come for some of us is not worth the waking. How do I feel free today when young Jose is in a cage? How can I have a happy heart when other hearts are breaking? When will the sun rise on kindness? When will the day break on to truth? What can I do to make sense of this? What can I do? The sun falls down behind a darkened place where heavy hands and heavy hearts remain. The time is near, the time to face the lives that we're taking. Justice. When will the day break on to truth? What can be done to make some sense of this? What can I do? Morning comes, the sun is up, day begins for all. But what will come for some of us is not worth the waking, not worth the waking.
Hey, everybody, we're back with David Noyes. That was a really great song. I really appreciate it. I've got to listen to it 2 or 3 more times. It certainly speaks to social justice issues for sure. So I do want to thank you for being here and giving me your time. But tell me, what are you doing now? I understand you play with the Walkers.
Yeah, it's kind of my musical avocation is playing with the Walkers. Our activity level goes up and down in a waveform, like things usually do in life. We have a standing once a month gig at a restaurant in East Northport, Crossroads.
And who's in the band?
It's Alan Santoriello, who is also known to be the lead singer of the Little Wilson Band.
Okay.
A famous, renowned band from the Northport area. Mm-hmm. Michael Nugent, of course, who I've been playing with on and off for many, many years. I mean, Mike is Mike. Mike has his thing that he does. Over the years, I've learned to recognize it and to appreciate what it is he particularly does. And Mike winds through an incredible musical vocabulary, an archive, and he's a free-form player. If I wrote an album of fusion stuff that had very strict melodies, I would probably hesitate to give it to Mike because that's not how he plays. He plays from the heart, he plays melodically, but he plays from his archive, and he's free form. And there are moments when it's just terrific, absolutely terrific.
Right.
Other times, we're just spreading gravel.
Right.
Getting through the bar,
Sure.
But those moments, those free form moments that really work, it's so worth it. It is absolutely so worth it. Alan's the same way.
Really?
Yeah, Alan's the same way as a singer. And I try to aspire to the same thing, is to be as loose and generous with myself as I can be. Try new things.
Right.
Just don't screw up the song, but try new things. Try to step into the middle of that song, and love the song, respect the song.
Sure.
And just, do what we can to make the listener say, wow, that just, it's like they're hearing the song for the first time.
Nice.
I just try to shoot for that, So I play with so many great people, and I'm grateful for them all. I've learned so much from all the people that I play with. And, I can't say enough, so I won't even try. It's just, it's been a great bunch of decades playing with all these guys.
Certainly, when I saw you play at Crossroads, it was really magical, to be honest with you. To see guys who've been playing for decades and really enjoying themselves. Not just going through the motions. I mean, you guys really have something special and something to be cherished. So I say this, and by the way, we're going to get Al on the program, so we're going to guilt him to being a guest on the program.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. And if it has to be a 3-hour podcast episode, it'll have to be a 3-hour podcast episode. A good friend of mine, Bob, told me this, and it always really kind of stays in my heart, is we don't know how much time we have on this earth. We know what's in our bank account, and the fact that you gave me, some time here and some great insights into music, which not only will benefit me, will benefit our audience. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for that. I had nothing but a pleasure to spend time with you. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace. Thanks so much for listening. Please rate, review, and comment on the show. We really love to hear from you. And call our listener line at 631-800-3579. Again, thanks so much. Be well.